Good evening, good evening. Hope you're doing well on this fine Tuesday evening. All right. Uncle Guns, thank you for putting the links in the chat. Appreciate you, man. So, we're going to talk about the sexual marketplace. I had a recent guy I'm working with just constantly talking about the sexual marketplace. And it's funny because I had to point out a number of truths to him and he just couldn't wrap his head around it. It's so weird. Anyways. So yeah, we're going to get into the sexual marketplace and the issues with that. And, oh, man, my neck. And we're going to talk a little bit about attachment. You know, as many of you know, I come from a Buddhist background, having lived in a couple of different Buddhist temples and studying it since I was 12. And so it's a big part of my life. Buddhism is a big part of my life. I never really became like an actual Buddhist. So I consider myself a Buddhist scholar in that I study the principles and things like that, but I'm not engaging in, daily rituals, meditation practices, all the things that go along with calling oneself a Buddhist. But I still appreciate the words, the philosophy, the way of looking at life. And I think it's beneficial for people because it doesn't really contradict with any other religion because there's no competing deity. Really, it's just it's like a metaphysical look at the self and getting to know who you are. And that's really the basis behind it. It's really the basis behind that. And so it's more like psychoanalysis than anything, but it is what it is, and people will look at it the way they want to. A lot of people will call it a religion, but it's really not. It's really not a religion at all. So I like that song, so I'm gonna play that again. It's a nice roller to keep in the background. So yeah, the things about attachment, this is really what fucks people up is attachment. And the funny thing is that they think it's the stuff of life that is a problem. And so people who have a very pious look at the whole thing, they will try to be like monks or something along those lines and not have a lot of possessions, right? And they think, well, the the less they have, the easier it is to be detached. And this is just not the way. It has nothing to do with any of that stuff. It has to do with the relationship to it. Kind of like with alcohol, right? Like alcohol is not intrinsically bad. I mean, yes, technically on a chemical level, it is poisonous, but it's not bad. People develop bad relationships with it. So it's the space between the person and the thing. So I grabbed this quote from Alan Watts. He's one of my favorite Western philosophers. And if you don't know who he is, he's a brilliant, brilliant mind. Probably one of the most knowledgeable people on Eastern philosophies that has come out of the West. Okay. So I've got a quote of his about attachment, and I'm going to read that for you. So he says, to be detached from the world, in the sense that Buddhists and Taoists and Hindus often speak about detachment, does not mean to be non-participative. By that, I don't mean that you go through doing everything mechanically and have your thoughts elsewhere. I mean a complete participation, but still detached. And the difference between the two is this. On the one hand, there is a way of being so anxious about physical pleasure, so afraid that you won't make it, that you grab it too hard, that you just have to have that thing. And if you do that, you destroy it completely. And therefore, after every attempt to get it, you feel disappointed. You feel empty. You feel something was lost. And so you want it again. You have to keep repeating, because you never really got that. And it is this that that's the hang-up. This is what's meant by attachment to the world. But on the other hand, pleasure in its fullness cannot be experienced when one is grasping it. I knew a little girl who someone gave a bunny rabbit. She was so delighted with the bunny rabbit and so afraid of losing it that taking it home in the car, she squeezed it to death with love. And lots of parents do that to their children. Lots of spouses do it to each other, and they hold on too hard. And so to take the life out of this transient, beautifully fragile thing that life is, to have it, to have life, and to have its pleasure, you must at the same time let go of it. And I would just change that last line. I would say to have it, to have life, and to have its pleasure, you must at the same time release your grasp. I think there's a difference between releasing your grasp and letting go. Letting go to me implies like it's dropping out of your hand. And releasing your grasp is just your kind of, lessening your grip and sort of holding the world in your hand, holding your spouse in your hand, but not necessarily squeezing or grasping at it. And, this is, he's right. Like, this is what we do. And it's all in a seeking of pleasure, and you guys do this with so much in your lives, and so much of your own suffering comes of that. So much of your suffering comes from that, and so you just keep trying and keep trying and keep trying, and keep chasing after pleasure. And so it comes in multiple layers of suffering, right? Because on one hand, you've got what Alan's talking about, where you suffer because you squeeze the life out of it with your grasping. And then there's a letdown from that. And then you go after it again and again and again. And so that's suffering. Now there's another layer when it comes to women, because they have this thing called pussy. And so you will also suffer because now you're chasing pussy. You are being led by pussy. You are submissive to pussy. And so now you're suffering because of that. You're being controlled. You're being led, guided, manipulated, and so on. So there's multiple layers of suffering that's happening here due to the grasping at pleasure, the seeking of pleasure, and the following of pleasure. And this is a huge thing that makes guys suffer. Huge thing. Like, you guys don't even realize it. You know, actually, that same guy that I was talking about with the sexual market value, which we'll get into, you know, he had an issue with this because on one hand, he was just like, oh my gosh, like I love women. But he wasn't just loving, right? Because, you know, what Alan said, that, you know, the only the time that you can actually have the thing that you want, have the thing that you enjoy, or actually enjoy it, is when you let go of it, when you release your grasp. And this is really the only time that you can actually enjoy a woman. This is only when you can truly appreciate women, is when you are free of grasping at them. And this is really nothing of their doing. Like, yes, of course, they're beautiful. They sound nice. They smell nice. They feel nice. All the wonderful things about women. Okay. But they're not doing anything to make you suffer. And guys who have problems with women, they will look at them and look at them and say, why are you making me suffer? And really, this is not what's making you suffer. You are making you suffer. And I know someone hearing this is going to be like, nah, that's bullshit. You know, these bitches out here are manipulative. They're doing this, they're doing that. No. For the most part, yes, there might be some who have a malicious heart and they are truly, you know, dark souls who want to manipulate people. You know, and women think this of men as well. But the largest area of the bell curve is just regular people, right? Just fumbling through life. And, you know, and then people just get hurt. And then the person who gets hurt thinks that they've been manipulated, but it's only because they have these attachments. And then they have their beliefs and their perceptions fucking with them. And so you mix in emotions with attachments and beliefs and perceptions, and you've got somebody who's pretty fucked up from an experience with another person. And they think that the other person did it to them, but they didn't. They were just being themselves, except for that small percentage that has, you know, truly malicious intent and they're manipulating people because they're sick in the head or they enjoy it or whatever, you know. But that's few and far between. For the most part, it's just people being idiots. And our suffering just comes from grasping. And so the big question is, you know, because when I was explaining this to him, he's like, yes, but I enjoy it. Like, I enjoy the rush. I enjoy the emotional rush and the ups and downs of being that attached to a woman emotionally. Okay. And he's talking about a girl that he only knew for, I don't know, maybe a month or two, something like that. And you might think that's ridiculous, you know, my regular guys here, or, you know, for you guys who have your brains sorted out, you're like, damn, that's crazy. But, you know, this is fairly common. This is fairly common that guys will get this attached to a woman. And, you know, in his case, it's simply because it was the hottest girl that he'd ever been with. And that's pretty common too. So like the prettiest girl you've ever been with, or the girl that you have the best sex with, you're going to be, you know, starstruck. And he then put her on a pedestal, and then she wasn't doing the same thing to him. You know, she was living rent free in his head and not the other way around. Not even like equally. 'Cause you know, you can live rent free in people's heads equally, but it was just a one-way street for this guy, and he knew it. And so it's almost as if, you know, for you guys who have been in this experience before, and I remember being in this experience as well, where it's almost like the attachment is the thing that keeps it alive, and almost like a part of you knows that if you let go, that it's going to die. It's simply your grasping that's keeping this thing alive. And if you didn't grasp, well, then you'd have nothing, because she's not actually giving you anything. She's calling you, maybe twice a month because she's bored, because you've got, this or that she enjoys. Maybe you're a good conversationalist. Maybe you do this or that for her. The specifics don't really matter, but it's not out of just a strong desire, because if it was strong desire, I mean, if you've had the experience, you got to scrape her off with a shovel. It's not just picking up the phone whenever because she's bored, or feeling lonely, or, any sort of bullshit like that. And so I get it. I get where you guys are coming from, those who have experienced this or are currently experiencing this. It's the attachment, and that if you let go, that it'll die. But the irony, going back to what Alan said, the irony is that your grasping is killing it. And by letting go, you actually allow things to be free. You allow the woman to be herself. You allow her to be with you. Not be with you, but you allow her to be with you. There's a difference. And when she's feeling this level of comfort from you, a lot of magic happens. A lot of magic happens in the sense that a lot of times women are not around men that they feel comfortable being themselves with. And it's a sliding scale. Maybe it's just 10%, maybe it's 40%, maybe it's 76%, maybe it's 98%. But a lot of times, like when you're experiencing a woman, unless she's super comfortable with you, you're not getting very much of her. She's not showing you really who she is. And, a lot of it that has to come down to the trust that she has in you and the way you make her feel. And when there's grasping, there is no room for trust or vulnerability to arise, because there's a sense of being trapped. And you can't expect someone to be free if they're trapped, right? It makes sense. It's perfect math, just very simple. Yet, you guys, who are like this, you think that that if you don't trap her, that's the only way you're going to get her. And this is where guys come up with all kinds of schemes. They come up with plans and ideas and, I guess what they would consider game, which is just pure manipulation. This is old school PUA shit from the early 2000s. And, all of this is just a feeble attempt at trying to ensnare her. And, and the thing is that when you're operating from, your masculine center, I just sound like a Tootsie Roll Pop. When you're operating from that center, it provides a certain feeling for her, such that you really don't have to do much. I mean, I can't say you don't do anything, but you don't do quite as much, because just I don't know how to describe it. I wish there was a woman here who could relay the feelings, because that would be much more helpful for her, for you guys, for a woman to relay the emotional experience. But from what I gather, it's just a sense of greater stillness. Now, frankly, I don't think any woman can truly be still mentally. That's just the way. That's just the way it is. But, anyways, well, that's curious. Anyways, all right. So yeah, stop blaming people for your suffering. Like the vast majority of what you suffer, especially when dealing with women, is you. You are the cause, and you're also the solution to your own suffering. Stop blaming women. Stop, looking for issues in the marketplace. Stop blaming social media. Stop blaming Hollywood. Stop blaming influencers. Stop blaming feminism. Stop blaming the economy. Stop blaming your job. Stop blaming your parents. Stop blaming your trauma sources. Stop blaming everything. It's up to your mindset, your beliefs, your perceptions, your choices, and your habits. That is the cause and the cure for your suffering. All of it. And for those that are stuck, you're going to say that's bullshit. You're going to say these women are crazy out here. They're fucking people over. They're doing this, they're doing that. What about that guy who was killed by this crazy bitch and all that stuff? Still, that's him. That's still him. I'm saying it's like, I don't know, you gotta be really heavily entranced, really heavily bewitched by a woman's beauty to not notice the red flags that come from a woman that's about to kill you. I mean, unless they're a seasoned murderer, like that show Dexter, like he has it down to a science, where people just don't ever think that he could be the guy, which is like a well-honed psychopath. Most women are not well-honed psychopaths, right? They're going to be clumsy. And the thing is that you're going to see shit and you're going to ignore it. You're going to ignore the obvious red flags. Now, of course, we don't have to sit here and talk about something as extreme as, girlfriends killing boyfriends and shit like that. But the red flags, you've seen them. You saw them, right? You saw the red flags. And the thing about red flags is that they won't go away on their own. Not typically. Okay? They're not going to typically go away on their own. Yet there's something in your head that makes you think that they will. Or if, she just keeps sucking your dick, like they'll just vanish. And that's just not the case. That's not how these things work. Really, red flags can be dealt with. But the thing is that you have to have a solid program. You actually have to know how to teach. You have to understand teaching models. You have to understand behavioral psychology. You have to understand how to utilize operant conditioning. You have to be able to utilize a number of psychological methods that will allow for behavior change. It's a lot of work, depending on like how deeply entrenched those red flags are. But the fact is that a lot of you guys just ignore them, and they're like, wow, but just look at her titties. Like, man, but look at that ass. Look at her pretty face, those lips. And it's like, do you not read history? Like, nations have fallen because of women. Well, now, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Because of guys' attachment to women's beauty. Nations have fallen because of the attachment men have had to women's beauty. They've started wars. They've killed friends. They've, got into arguments. They've stolen shit. They've, they've robbed, they've pillaged. They've committed acts of violence. All because of the attachment that one has to a woman's physical beauty. And and you're just still at it. Like, I don't get it. Right. So here's a tip. Stop following women on Instagram. Stop following women on TikTok. Okay. Change the algorithm of the shit that shows up for you by looking up different things, right? Things that, hobby interests and that sort of stuff. Eventually you'll just get stuff in your feed that has nothing to do with women. You shouldn't be following women simply because they're pretty. Okay, like, yes, if they've got some, cool like business information, or if they've got a craft that they, you have some sort of interest in, like there's some practical reason why you're following a woman on social media, then that's fine. But if it's just because you think she's pretty, that really is not a good reason. And it just furthers your attachment, which is causing you suffering. On multiple levels. It keeps you magically entranced to all those curves and to that softness. And it's like, nah, man, like you gotta break out of it, because if you don't, all of your efforts to, like better yourself, it's going to have those tethers. It's going to be tainted by this attachment to beauty, and you could keep this up for years and years and years. And this guy, actually, I told him that I didn't want to take him on as a student because he was so fucking hard-headed, and he was very much saying like, yes, I see your point. I understand where you're coming from, but I don't want to give up my attachment. And it's kind of like, Neo is showing another guy and is like, hey man, like this isn't reality. This over here is the real reality. And the one who, he's trying to show this to is like, yeah, I see that, but I want to stay over here. I want to stay in the Matrix. And it's like, okay, let me try a different way. Let me try a little harder. And I was just met with resistance and resistance and resistance. And I'm like, okay, you know what? You just want to bang chicks. That's all you want to do. That's all you want to do. You want to become more attractive to women. And I'm like, no matter how good looking you get, like how fit you are, haircuts and skin treatment and your food and vitamins and all that stuff, and your money and your house, your car, watches, traveling, taking pictures, posting them up, show what an interesting life you've got. All of that is in vain, because someone like this guy, they're doing it for the sole purpose of being attractive to women. And I would say, I'll say kudos to him for at least being honest, because a lot of you jokers will be like, nah, I'm not doing that for pussy. I fuck women. I'm not doing that for women. I'm doing this for myself. It's like, right. And because like, I know, because the chances are, sure, I could be wrong, but chances are, like the vast majority of guys don't have a detached perspective towards women. They're very much attached. So the chances are that they're lying is quite high. So yeah, you guys too who are like, nah, I don't do this for women. Fuck that. I do this for myself. Most likely you're lying. And I knew this guy was lying too, but actually he wasn't lying. He was straightforth with the honesty around like, yeah, I'm doing this for women. I want to be more attractive to women. And but the problem was that he couldn't see that this was an issue. And this is what was causing him anxiety. This is what was causing him suffering. Because when you have this viewpoint of, I'm doing this so that I can be attractive to women, whether you want to lie about it or not, This keeps a collar and a leash around your neck, and the other end is being walked by a woman. That's what happens. You are being led by beauty. You're being led by women. You're being led by pussy. Then when you're in spaces like this, or you're in spaces with men or whatever, social media perhaps, you say, I'm a leader. Really? You're a leader. Is that so? And you're doing that how? Well, there's a collar around your neck. Make that make sense. I'll pay you $500 to make that make sense. But I love pussy. Well, that's your problem, dude. Yep. You can't love pussy. Sure, you can enjoy it. You can appreciate pussy. You can appreciate women. And you know, to go back to what Alan was saying, you can't actually appreciate women. You can't actually appreciate pussy. You can't actually love women unless you are able to let go of them. You know, this guy, he was obsessed with this girl, even though he kept telling me, I'm not obsessive. I'm not the obsessive type. And I'm like, dude, I've literally taken notes of all the things that you're obsessive about and how many times you've mentioned things. And so I said, all right, delete all their pictures. Delete them all. Really? You think you're strong? You think you're grounded? Delete all the pictures of this girl that you're obsessed with, that you've known for only a couple of months. I dare you. And he said, no, I can't. And I said, I know you can't, because you are being led on a leash by pussy. And you guys say, oh man, well, I'm not that bad. Yeah, but the pictures are in your mind. You're still led. You still have that leash around your neck. Let's see here. Guns. Some guys don't want to break away from being males. They don't feel complete without a woman in their life. It's an addiction, and they can't confront who they are without it. Yeah, and that actually, that last part there, they can't confront who they are without it. That was actually a very profound, Guns, because some guys, when they come to me as a student, they have a lot of difficulty revealing themselves to me, because it's a bit painful. It's a bit of a painful process to reveal yourself to another man, to say, you know, like an AA meeting. So like, raise your hands. You're like, hey, I'm Bob and I'm alcoholic. Right? Like, that takes a lot of courage. There's some embarrassment there, to make that recognition and say, hey, you know what? I'm fucked up. And it's tough. It really is. And what I noticed is that the stronger the trauma, the harder it is. All right. So let's say you've got a life that's full of trauma. Your childhood was really fucked up. Okay. In order to survive psychologically and emotionally, you've had to develop certain coping mechanisms that kept you on the defense. You had to defend your mind against environmental stresses, and the stresses from other people. And so certain armors, layers were built up around the self in order to protect it. And this is all well and good, because that's just what we do as humans. You know, we do the things that we need to do in order to survive, not just physically, but emotionally as well, and psychologically, right? Part of our survival instinct is not to go insane. All right. So, you know, or off ourselves or hurt other people or what have you. So if there's high levels of trauma, then a lot of armored layers are built up. Then when you come to someone like me who says, okay, it's time to take the armor off. And they're like, well, wait a second. Like, I'm comfortable wearing my armor. It's been many years. It's kept me very safe. I quite like wearing my armor. And I'm like, well, you're not going to get anywhere wearing that armor. It has no use here. You know, kind of like that scene in was it Empire Strikes Back, when Luke was training with Yoda on Dagobah, and he goes off into the swamp as part of a test, and he takes his blaster and his lightsaber, and Yoda says, where you're going, you won't need your weapons. Because Luke had to go face himself. He had to go face the dark side of his ego, his shadow. And so it's in the same sense that, like, when you come to me, your armor has no use. In fact, if you keep it on, it makes the process nearly impossible. Because I'll present information, and it's like you're looking at it through this little slit in your visor, and you're like, cool, all right, makes sense, right? And you can see it, but it's not actually getting in. In order for it to get in, you have to take the layers off and expose yourself to another man. You have to trust me that I'm not going to harm you, that I'm not going to make fun of you, that I'm actually going to support you. And for guys who have high levels of trauma, they also have very high levels of distrust. That's just part and parcel of the game, right? The game that they had to play. And this is men and women both. And so they get, into this conditioned, habitual way of living. And, but when it comes to coaching, it actually gets in the way. You will not progress until you're able to reveal yourself, reveal your shortcomings, reveal your pain, reveal your frustration, reveal your anger, right? Because behind all of that is truth. Behind your pain, behind your anger, behind your anxiety, your frustration, all of that stuff lies a tremendous amount of truth. But you can't see it if you've got your coping mechanisms in place. You'll never see it. And it's just simply truths about yourself. And those truths will be extremely eye-opening. And sometimes even those truths will be painful. That's just part of it. Sometimes the truth hurts. I think somebody said that somewhere. But that's just the way it is. That's the path of man. Like, part of our life is just eating a sandwich made of fucking roofing nails. That's just the way it goes. And we're like, and you got to put a smile on and go, damn, that's fucking good. All right? Sorry for you guys who came here looking for tips and tricks on how to get women into bed. Yeah, go to another channel. You're not going to find that here. You're not. The funny thing is that if you go through the process, you do the work, and it could literally take you months, maybe even years, you will never have to use any tip or trick ever again. You will not. Because your fucking, like, Jedi force will be flowing so freely, so strong, that you will have no need for any of that shit. All you have to do is just look, listen, speak, and do. That's it. That's it. Like, it's when you embody yourself as a man, things become so much easier. I'm not saying life is easy. Life is not easy for anyone, but it just becomes easier than when you were living as a male who was asleep to his own drugs, his own, curse of, seeking pleasure and being entranced by beauty and chasing after the next best and grasping at things in life. It's so much better. Like, my cortisol levels are probably in the fucking tank. I'm serious. You get lighter, because what happens is that your internal world becomes much more still. It becomes like, have you ever been camping and maybe with a tent or in a cabin that was by a lake? And maybe around this time of year, right? When, it's fall and you get up early in the morning and it's cold. Not super cold, but cold enough where you need a sweater or a hoodie or something. You got your jeans on, and it's not quite bright yet. The sun hasn't really fully risen in the sky. And you're there by that lake, and it's barely moving. And it looks like it's made out of black glass. That lake is like what your internals are as a man. It's like that. It's cool, it's crisp, it's calm, and it's reflective. But it's not hard like steel. It's soft like water. This is what it's like. It's, and it's like, you guys, like the dude that I'm, thinking about, it's like his fucking hamster wheel in his head was moving probably at the same rate as a woman's. And I can't imagine how you guys live day to day with just rampant hyperdrive thoughts about all kinds of shit, putting your consciousness in the heads of other people in the attempt at, I don't know, gaining something, gaining a leg up or whatever. Like that just sounds like a life of shit to me. I'd rather have nothing and have stillness than have everything and be a fucking maniac inside my skull. But that's just me. Yep. Some facts there, trying to repeat that first girlfriend experience. Most, in my experience, have their personality stuck in their 8-year-old self trying to please mommy. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it can be that there was tease back in school because the men can't get women. Yeah. Yep. Oh, teasing like from other students or something like that. Yeah, maybe. But like I was saying before, we as grown men, we as grown men, you have a responsibility to stop blaming everything else. You got to stop that shit. This is what adolescents do. Right? You're playing with your friends, you're fucking around, you got a ball in the house. Dad said don't play with the fucking ball in the house. But you did it anyways because he's at work. So like screw him. And you're fucking tossing that thing around and it hits the vase and the vase hits the ground, And mom comes in, she hears the crash. Who did it? Everyone's like, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Like slowly like pushing the ball underneath the sofa. How did this happen? I don't know. We just came in here. It was like that. Right? No. Take responsibility. Take responsibility for as much as you can that's in your life. As much as you can. You don't want to be able to push things off onto other people so that you can have the opportunity to say, oh, I didn't do it. I'm not at fault. That didn't involve me. Take accountability for as much as you can. Now, I'm not talking about the things that other people do, right? And things that are outside of your control. But if you can influence it, if it's something within your control, take accountability for it. Most especially your thoughts, your words, and your actions. This is what's critical in life. This is what separates adolescents and men, is that we take responsibility for everything that comes out of us. So we never will say, well, it was that person's fault. They made me do it, right? or you're blaming this that happened in your childhood, or that your parents this, or society that, or whatever. It's like, grow the fuck up, maybe bounce up and down a little bit to make your balls drop, and take some accountability and stop blaming other people for the shit that happens to you. Yep. What's up, Dylan? Good to see you, man. So yeah. So considering these outside influences, let's talk about the sexual market. I've got so much material from this dude. You will not believe. I took such a long page of notes, like in my notes app on my phone, from talking with this guy. And it's never really a failure. It's never really a failure. See, that's the other thing. When you're living the path of man, you never really lose on anything, right? Especially because you've got emotional control. You have what the kids are calling emotional intelligence, which basically means you're calibrated. You're not a robot, obviously. And so you do have emotions, you feel them, but you are calibrated. This is what being emotionally intelligent means. You're intelligent with your emotions. You're smart about them. They don't run rampant, right? As the Buddhists say, you're leading the donkey and the donkey's not leading you. So, you've got that emotional control. It allows you to see things a lot more clearly. And then from there, basically you can do anything you want. But anyways, so he kept bringing up this, the sexual market. And this is the thing. The sexual market exists, but it doesn't. Okay? Because on one hand, you can look at, sociological things and, mating structures and mating habits and where people marry and who they get paired up with and all this data and stuff like that, and go, look, there's the sexual market. And yes and no. All right. Because on one hand, scientifically, sure, you could say it was this, but the way a lot of people are looking at the sexual market is typically just based on looks. Let's be real here. The thing is that the sexual market is really just a construct. It's just a mental construct. It doesn't actually have legs, right? Sure, there's people who live in different social strata, right? There are places that very wealthy people will go to on a daily basis that I will not in New York. It just isn't going to happen. And, and there's some places where very poor people go in New York that I won't, right? It's just not going to happen. But that's not the sexual market. And so the thing that the weird little trap of being aware of the sexual market is that simply by being aware of it, this will change your behaviors. And you will start behaving in a way that is conducive to a marketplace, thus making the marketplace your master. And this is where you get the awareness of listening to what women find attractive, listening to the desires of women, listening to the so-called needs of women. And this is what will lead you into further suffering. So then you'll try harder. You'll grasp harder at the market. You'll try to get more buff. You'll try to make more money. You'll try to get a better car. You'll try to get a better home. You'll try to get the more expensive wristwatch, right? All in this effort to meet the demands of the sexual market. I was listening to these guys on Clubhouse, and this one dude said, well, the types of women who come to you or match with you or that you go on dates with or what have you, that is what determines your placement on the market. So basically, women are the measuring stick. So it's really not the market. The market to guys who believe in this is actually just women. To them, the entire market is women. So it's just creating this like whole like social structure around the preferences and desires of women, and therefore making it your master. You are a slave. You are not a free man. Even if you get to the top, even if you have women, desiring you, fucking you, doing all sorts of shit with you, whatever. Even if you have the, the surface level, symbols of achieving within the market, you are still subject to it. And therefore you're actually not winning. I hope that makes sense. Your participation and your awareness will have you never winning, ever. And I tell my guys, I'm like, it was just this one, because my guys really don't talk about the sexual market at all. They know better than that. But this guy, he's just so hard-headed, and he just keeps talking about it. And I said, in my neighborhood, where men live, I'm the market. I didn't say we are the market, or the market is in our neighborhood. No. It's the very specific choice of words. I am the market. And it's maybe a little hard to explain, maybe a little esoteric, but if you just think about it, reflect on the feeling of that phrase when you hear it. That's what it's about. I am the market. And it's not in reference to anyone else. It's basically saying, I'm the authority of me. Something outside of that, that's mostly conceptual, is not an authority over me. It's not what determines my value. And guys will say, oh man, but that's a symbol. As a symbol of your greatness by the attractiveness of your woman that you get off the market. Okay. And I could see where these guys are coming from, but then not only are women your measuring stick of value, but now that's the perceptions of other men is also a measuring stick for your value. That's pretty fucking weak. Now you have two rulers or two yardsticks, two measuring tapes that are not you, determining who the fuck you are, what your value is. That's weak. So the trick here is to forget about it, to erase the whole concept of the sexual market from your mind. I think somebody made a comment about it. Was it guns? Yes. Sexual marketplace is one of those BS manosphere buzzwords. Yeah, so here's the thing. A lot of guys who participate in this manosphere, they're nerds. They have been looking at the world from the outside their entire lives. They've never felt like they've been participating in it. So what they would do is just observe and take notes or mental notes and start analyzing. And this gives them a sense of control, right? So, because the reality is that they're not in control. They're not even participating. And this is, I'm talking about like the unchosen. What do they call? Is that what they call them? What's the phrase? The non-select. That's the phrase that I've heard. The non-select. The non-select have I guess it's it's an interesting kind of advantage where they're able to observe all this stuff happening from the outside because they're not in it. They're not participating. No one's checking for them. And so they can look at all this stuff from afar and start, taking it apart and making connections and all this stuff. And it gives, it gives them a sense of power, because they're like, oh, all these people who are participating, they don't realize, they don't see all these things that are going on. They don't get it. They're asleep. I'm awake. I'm so smart. I'm so smart, I can't even participate in that nonsense. And the sad part is that that's the only thing that they've got. Because they can't participate, they can't will themselves into the market. And if they could, they would be there. But they can't. They can't make women find them attractive. They can't make women find them interesting. That's just life. And they're looking for something that will give them a fingerhold, some kind of advantage, even if it's just to make themselves feel better. So this is where you get all this analysis, trying to figure things out, because there's so many other things in their lives that have been figured out, from an intellectual standpoint, and it's worked out. But this is concerning the behaviors of other people. And this simply won't do. The same strategy won't work. So it just fills your head with knowledge, and some of it may be true. Maybe a lot of it may be true. But that doesn't change the fact that they are still non-select. And they cannot think their way out of this. That's the funny thing. You cannot intellectualize yourself onto the market. The only thing you can do, and it's quite easy, it's a lot easier than doing what they're doing, what you guys are doing perhaps, is just letting go. That's all you have to do. Just forget about it. Forget about the market. Because while you're so desperate to be recognized on it, it's not desperate for you. You're just a faceless, unknown piece that's floating around in it, just like everyone else. So the thing to do is to just eradicate it from your mind. Pay it no more mind. Because being aware, I've not heard a single story of how being aware of the sexual market and how it moves was a benefit to them. I mean, if any of you can, tell me like an instance where that was the case, I'm all ears. I am all ears for information about how the knowledge of the market has actually benefited them in some way. My guess is that it's a lie. So yeah, that's how this bullshit is. All right. So work on your attachments. Work on your accountability. Work on letting go. And this is what brings you closer to stillness. It's what brings you closer to stillness. And this is what will bring about a sense of peace, a decrease in anxiety, a decrease in cortisol. And when you have decrease in anxiety and cortisol, the things that you do to cope with these feelings becomes less as well. Because let's say you've got an overactive mind. It's got, fears, worries, pains, angers, frustrations, just lots of considerations, trying to figure shit out, right? And I'm talking about in the realm of women. That doesn't feel good. So to minimize this, there isn't a cutting off or a ridding one's mind of this stuff. Instead, coping mechanisms are brought into play. So now you're adding. Okay, so there is fucking chaos already, and on top of it, you add more shit as a means of calming things down. And that might work temporarily, but it's still adding more shit. So you've added just more. Now you've got a surplus of shit in your head. Okay? All of these things. When you could do away with the coping mechanisms, the distractions, the destructive behavior, maybe it's like drinking or drug use or, hyper media consumption or what have you, disassociation, ways to force your mind to be distracted as a type of detachment. Okay. All of this stuff can be just let go, and you'll get to a better place of dealing with whatever those feelings are simply by not using coping mechanisms and letting go of all the shit that you're attaching to that you think is giving you an advantage by thinking about it so much. Like overthinking or multitasking in your head or whatever it is when it comes to that shit about women, it never gives you a leg up. You're not going to outsmart the system. You're not going to outsmart women. Well, you can outsmart women by simply not thinking about them so much. Really, the only time you should be thinking about women is when they've earned it. When they've earned your mental space, right? That's really the only time. That's the time that you should be spending with regard to women when it comes to, your mental activity. Why would you give free thought? Why would you give free anything? Free words, free actions. You guys, a lot of you guys like, man, fuck that. I'm not going to take a woman out to a nice dinner until she's earned it. Okay, cool. Like, great. Good for you. Pats on the back. Okay. So why aren't you doing that with your mind? You're fucking, you got steel nuts when it comes to dates. Why don't you have steel nuts when it comes to your brain? You got steel nuts when it comes to, not double texting and, not texting first or, only using texting for logistics and, whatever sort of like rules of communication. You're hard about that stuff. You're hard about communication. You're hard about dates. Okay. Yet you're just waiting. I mean, you're like a fucking panther at the cage pacing back and forth with your sexuality. You're so ready to let that free and give it up for free. Okay. So that doesn't have the same guarding. You don't guard your dick as much as you guard a fucking cocktail lounge. You're like, fuck the cocktail lounge, but my dick is free. You guys are such idiots. I'm not going to talk to her, but I'm going to think about her all the time. I don't do heroin, but I do tons of cocaine. At least I'm not a heroin addict. He's like, okay, buddy, but you have no septum because you burned a hole through it. Yeah, you guys are a trip. Yeah, you'll say no to dates, but you'll willingly give a woman your seed, right? You'll say no to dates, but you'll allow a woman to have one of the greatest parts of your body without doing anything except for just showing up and be, willing to allow you to put it inside her. Like, that's it. And just like rub your skin on the inside of her body. Jesus. These guys, man. Yeah, with all these like rules. So the logic isn't consistent. So get consistent with your logic, guys. Get consistent with your rules. Get consistent with your boundaries. Don't be cherry picking boundaries. It makes you look like an idiot. Dog is like flipping out. So yeah, there's the thoughts there about the sexual market. It's a fucking illusion. Stop thinking about it. It's worthless. It will do nothing for you. Okay? And yeah, there's that song that I like. The market will do nothing for you. Forget about it. Take accountability for your thoughts, words, and actions. Claim responsibility over the things that you can affect as a man. That's what men do. Don't be an adolescent. Don't be a fucking teenager trying to escape responsibility, especially with yourself. Like, take ownership of your shitty thoughts. Take ownership of your bad habits. Take ownership of your lack of vocabulary. Take ownership over the fact that you have a dead end job, and like why you're not trying to do something different. Take ownership over your gut. All right? Take ownership of just the things in your life that you have control over, that you can change. Take ownership of how you react to shit. Because understand, if you can be moved, that which moves you is your master. Right? If you're standing there and you're trying to hold your position, and I move you, I have mastered you. Doesn't matter if we're wrestling, or we're at war with two armies, or we're playing chess, or if I'm just trying to, like sumo, like push you out of a circle, or if I move you emotionally, I have mastered you. So be mindful of your reactions. And also, lastly, mind your attachments. By grasping at the world, by grasping at the things in your life, by grasping at the feeble identity that you think you have, by grasping at women, thinking that if you hold harder, you'll be able to maintain it longer. And this is just entirely false. This will just end in more and more suffering. And if you're wise, you will not repeat yourself again and again. Okay? All right. So I hope that this stream was beneficial for you. Again, follow the links in the description of the video. If you enjoyed what you heard, you can support me by buying my book. I've got a couple of downloadable ebooks for you. I've also got one free ebook for you. It's the free one's not anything astounding. Probably a lot of you think that it's commonplace, but hey, sometimes commonplace information is not common. But yeah, you can support me by buying my book, How to Be a Fantastic Lover. It will help you into becoming the best, or if not that, one of the best lovers that a woman has ever had. You can also join the video membership. It's reasonably priced, and I upload new videos to that every month, either 1 or 2 videos. It's constantly growing. Right now there's probably, 50, almost 60 videos in there. And if you're interested in getting one-on-one coaching, I suggest that you get in touch with me about the details regarding that. You can email me at justin@thedominanceacademy.com, or you can find me on Instagram, and the handle is down there on the ticker, thedominance.academy. And schedule a free consultation, and we'll take things from there. Okay. Glad everybody was here for the live. Thank you for watching the replays, for you who are doing that. And I wish you a good rest of your week if I don't stream again. Have a good one.